Good morning. I call to order the Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization Executive Board meeting on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 at 10 a.m. If you'd please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 is the roll call. Ms. Lojewski, if you'd please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cal Sheehy.
Here.
Buster Johnson.
Here.
Nancy Campbell.
Here.
Gary Knight.
Here. Present.
Jenny Koch. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We'll continue with the meeting. Item 4 is our call to the public. This is an item to provide an opportunity for citizens that wish to address the executive board on issues within the jurisdiction of the Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization, planning area that are not on the agenda. Would anyone like to address the executive board at call to the public? Seeing none, we'll close the call to the public. Move on to item 5, which is our meeting minutes from our June 13th, 2023 meeting, and also our special meeting on June 27th, 2023. Are there any questions on the minutes as provided? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Supervisor Johnson and a second from Councilmember Campbell. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item 6, which is our traffic signal analysis and modeling study and the RFP timeline. Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Just a quick update on our procurement process for the analysis and modeling study. We sent that out July 10th for advertisement. We got read receipts from roughly 24 and one response with intent to submit a proposal. So we know of at least one firm that's going to submit, which is good news. We're looking at a September 8th proposal submittal deadline, and then that will give the Transportation Advisory Committee roughly 2 weeks to review those proposals, rank those proposals, and decide whether interviews are necessary or not necessary. And then we're looking anywhere from October 10th or December 12th for executive board approval on final contract on the top firm. Again, pending on whether we need to do interviews or not, dictates whether we bring that in front of the board October or December. And with that, Mr. Chair, again, just a quick update, but I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the procurement. So thus far for the analysis and modeling study.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hembry, and thank you for the update on this item. Are there any questions of members of the board for Mr. Hembry? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, which is the Transportation Alternatives Call for Projects. Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the TA program, which used to involve multiple types of the Trails program, the Safe Routes to School, some of the historic programs, they wrapped that, the IIJA and the bill has brought that program back, but they lumped it all together and they're now just calling it the Transportation Alternatives Program. And this is usually geared towards your bicycle, pedestrian, alternative modes of transportation outside of just your normal vehicles. With that, I did send out a email to our Transportation Advisory Committee and some of the other agencies as far as there's an eligibility checklist of what's eligible, who's eligible. The call for projects from ADOT, now to backtrack a little bit, this is an ADOT grant, so this is going to be administered by ADOT, not through the MPO. However, agencies must come through the MPO when they're working on their applications for support letters for those grant applications. They're doing it a little bit different than some of their other programs. Typically, you would just see a call for applications or projects with a due date. However, they're doing a 2-phase application process, which was very interesting. There's going to be a evaluation application deadline, which is August 31st. They just released this July 20th, so it's not much time, roughly a month to get these applications in. The first deadline is to basically screen. It's a pre-screening process to make sure that these projects are eligible. And then the final applications are due September 29th. Again, these are alternative projects. The MPO, we're currently looking at possibly submitting our own application for scoping. We can't do design and construction projects because we don't have cash match. but we can do scoping projects. And we have encouraged all agencies this first year. There's going to be roughly 3 or 4 years of this TA program at the state level through the bill and IIJA. But because this first year of funding was a little bit slow to get off the ground, mainly because ADOT hired consultants to build this program, build the applications, there's an online form that you go to fill out that grant application. So there was a lot involved of getting this program reinstituted at a state level and geared for future years and future grant applications. So his first call for projects, a month to get those preliminary applications, it was not much time. And because we don't have a long queue of projects that are scoped and ready to go by most agencies and the MPO, our recommendation is to go after the scoping first, to have this TA program scope the projects of interest, and then in future years reapply for the actual design and construction funds. And with that, Mr. Chair, again, I just wanted to highlight the program, let everyone know that the call is out. The evaluation applications are due August 31st. If you get approved and you make it through the screening process, final applications would due September 29th. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hembry. So have we decided what projects we're going to submit for, or just do the scoping project as the MPO and then wait for the TAC members to provide?
The local agencies, I haven't heard word back. We just distributed it. Like I said, it's only been a few weeks, so
Right.
I'm not sure where the local agencies are at. For the MPO, our approach would be basically taking our bicycle pedestrian plan. I've looked through that. There's a few spots on more of the safe routes to school where half-mile radius from, say, an elementary school or a middle school or a high school, we would submit something like that with some schematics from our bicycle pedestrian plan saying that this was prioritized in an older plan for the MPO, and we'd like to scope that project for future grants. So that's the only way for the MPO to identify projects. Yes, there are some bicycle ones, but honestly, the feedback we've gotten over the years as far as McCulloch or Kiowa of losing on-street parking in lieu of some of the bicycle lanes was not a very well-received proposal. So for us, if the MPO does go for applications, we're going to try to get more of the pedestrian. And again, that would just be for scoping.
Okay.
So whether we submit one application for like a systemic and try to go for multiple areas, or three or four applications and highlight, various elementary schools and middle schools throughout town, I think that's honestly going to be our approach, to submit multiple applications. Again, for us, for the MPO, because it's a scoping, we can do in-kind on these types of projects. If it's awarded, ADOT would still administer, do an on-call process, bring a consultant in, look at the sidewalks, look at the safe routes to school kind of areas. But there are other, I don't want to limit it to just sidewalks. There's a slew of eligible type projects, from educational type programs to, the bicycle, pedestrian, what have you, electric vehicle. There's a lot there. But for the MPO, just because we haven't identified what even projects would be of interest, we always default back to our existing planning documents. So whether it's our long range plan or our bicycle pedestrian plan, both of those documents have the same type of sidewalk projects, safe routes to school type projects identified. So to help us scope them, that's probably what we'll go for. Yeah. But for the local agencies, I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Hembry?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a comment. I love the safe routes to school ideas and concept. I have had a lot of people come to me and are concerned, and I am now the grandmother that is trying to make it through the high school, and it is quite challenging to say the least. And I think making sure we have really secure pathways, walking paths and crosswalks, and potentially bike paths for the kids is incredibly important, I think. I look forward to seeing that project move forward.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? All right. Thank you, Mr. Hembry. We'll move on to item 8, which is our RTAC projects for legislative session 2024. Mr. Hembry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the email went out on June 18th for the call for the legislative RTAC projects. We're basically taking the same approach that we did last year. I've already spoken with Mr. Frosley and Jess at the city level as far as the types of projects. The strategy is the same, to basically take the city's CIP projects for the next 5 years and to create project fact sheets for each one of those pavement preservation type projects. That was, kind of the easier, the low hanging fruit as far as identifying projects, the needs there immediately. So for us, we put a due date on the call for projects for September 8th. This year, At the RTAC level, last year was roughly 10 million was Havasu's proposed allocation. This year it's a little over 14 million. We've already gotten a project back from Mojave County. They're repeating the same project from last year as far as the request for London Bridge Road for rubber chip seal. So we just basically added another 25,000 for inflation, and they've resubmitted. We've already got their fact sheet ready to go. I am working with Mr. Frosley and the engineering team at the city side. They're getting their list of projects. They promised they'd have them in by the September 8th due date. And then the MPO will take those, go take pictures, maps, the whole works. In your packet, you'll see I think the last page there is an example of the type of project fact sheet that we would send off to RTAC to put in the overall booklet that would become the omnibus list to go in front of the legislators during the 2024 session. As far as success rate, I really do want to give credit to the process over the last 2 years. Year one, we got it through the House, but it died in the Senate. Last year, we got it through the House and the Senate, and a majority of those projects did make it into the governor's budget. So we have high hopes. However, we feel this last year, because of the COVID revenue, we were flush with cash. We feel like this is probably the last year we'll see these large one-time allocations towards infrastructure projects. So with that said, we're hoping to shoot the moon this last year with roughly, I think it was 13.9 million would be our proposed allocation for Lake Havasu MPO. So again, going through, just looking at the city's 5-year CIP program was roughly that number, roughly 14 million. So we're going to submit those CIP projects to RTAC and to the legislators next year. Again, just wanted to bring that to the board's attention as far as due date September 8th, and then the MPO will put together our fact sheets. We will send that information off to RTAC/Central Arizona Council of Governments, CAG. Their planner, Travis Ashball, the last few years has put together that overall fact sheet with all projects from statewide. Has done an excellent job. And then during our rural summit at the end of October, that booklet and those projects would be presented to the legislators that attend the RTAC Rural Summit. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very nice. In the packet that you provided us on page 2, it lists out a funding formula based on percentage population. It's my understanding the Bullhead City region is supposed to be getting an MPO. It doesn't look like they're accounted for in this area. Will they be in place by the next legislative session?
So that's a great question. So they are basically saying for the legislative stuff, we're just going to stick with the WACOG region is going to still cover they're working with WACOG right now on their legislative fact sheets and their projects, because the Bullhead MPO have until December to be designated as an MPO and to be up and running. They're still waiting on the designation from the governor. I think they have to do they have to adopt those resolutions at the city level and the county level before they're formally an MPO. So until they get those resolutions adopted as an MPO and then back to the governor for final signature, they're just thought it would be easier to go through the WACOG process for the RTAC. So to answer your question, no, I don't think they'll be ready for that by October and then the next legislative session. So they've opted to stay with WACOG for now for the RTAC legislative Greater Arizona type project.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. All right. Are there any other questions from members of the board for Mr. Hembree on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council report. Is Mr. Adam online?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see everybody. We finally had an end to the legislative session last week. It was starting to drag on to the point that everybody was worried about the enactment date of new laws. That doesn't happen until 90 days after the end of session, which becomes a problem if you don't end the session. So we ended it last week. The big area of concern for transportation was whether or not the legislature would provide Maricopa County with the authority to take to their voters an extension of the transportation 1/2 cent sales tax for the region. And that was extremely contentious over the course of the session. But ultimately, in the end, they were able to pass legislation that will provide the county with that authority. So we expect that vote to occur next year. Currently within the county, it's polling 68% of the public support the extension. So polling really well. This is a revenue source that I don't think the infrastructure can afford to lose. Obviously, we can't have a failed choke point in the middle of our state as far as system impacts. But in addition, as far as the revenue is concerned, you're talking roughly $800 million a year in a system that's dramatically underfunded. And even though all of that funding can only be used in Maricopa County, if it were to go away, the strain that would put on the remaining resources, most of which are shared statewide, would probably have a direct impact on the level of funding that's provided everywhere. So I think that this had massive implications for all of greater Arizona. So, we're relieved that we got the authority. Still got to get it passed by the voters. But again, it's polling really well. So that was a real positive end to the session. As far as that session goes, they did have a substantial surplus to work with once again, and they directed $650 million to transportation infrastructure, pavement rehabilitation for the state highways, another $12.5 million for the SMART Fund, and then there was a tremendous amount that was provided to projects across the state. So with your last agenda item, yes, we are pursuing legislation once again. That's a very fluid process, but I think if we put out there and demonstrate the need and the demand, all we're doing is really setting up and making that justification to prioritize transportation with any available revenues. And it was, $650 million last year. It was $1 billion the year before. We're not going to see those levels of revenue available this year. I think we've pretty much exhausted those one-time revenues that accumulated out of the federal and state responses to COVID. And we are starting to see growth start to basically not accelerate at previous rates. But I'm fairly confident that there will be some available revenues last year. And again, we're making the case to direct as much of that as we can to the infrastructure. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Are there any questions for Mr. Adam from members of the board? All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Adam.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Item 10 is our ADOT district report. Is Mr. Steinberger online? Perfect.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Perfect. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. The pavement preservation project that's gone through SR 95 from Sarah Park to I-40, we have started the ADA improvements on that, and then we're anticipating paving starting next month in September. Also, we were fortunate enough to get some state funding, maintenance funding for the end of the year. And you're seeing that work south of Lake Havasu City all the way down to the Bill Williams River. That's a microcell. And then out on I-40, we completed our emergency paving repairs through maintenance that we got funding for. We completed that last week. You have the Walnut Creek to Holy Moses, which is from milepost 33 to 46 on I-40, both directions. That project is kicked off and will be starting paving in October. And then we are in the process of doing the design for the mill and fill project from milepost 2 to 8 on I-40 in both directions, and that is slated to advertise either at the end of October or November. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Steinberger. Are there any questions from members of the board? All right, seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thanks.
All right, item 11 is our Arizona Transportation Board report. Mr. Knight?
Yes, thank you. We have our Transportation Board meeting in August. It's the 18th, but it's virtual. It won't be in person anywhere, so you can all attend the meeting virtually if you so desire. There's a state, it's a ADOT or highway, tribal highway summit going on this week in Phoenix, which I'll be attending, and the tribes from all around the state will be at that summit. It'll be on Wednesday and Thursday. The last Transportation Board meeting was July 21st. The only things on that meeting that we approved are in the general vicinity. Bullhead City seemed to get the most attention at this meeting. Agenda item 3D was the Bullhead City Kingman Highway SR 68, milepost 0.1 to 14.67. Replace the asphalt. That was a $5.9 million project. We awarded it to Pavco, and it's supposed to take 110 working days. The other item was item 11E, Bullhead City along Silver Creek Road, installing roadway lighting. That was awarded to McKiana Contracting, Inc. for $415,337, and it's supposed to be completed in 125 working days. And that was the only items in Mojave County that were on last month's agenda. So I'll be happy to take any questions from anybody if you have any.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Knight. Thank you for the report and for your service on the board. Are there any members or any questions from members of the board? All right. Thank you again for being here.
You bet.
Item 12, any future agenda items? All right. 13, our upcoming meeting schedule. There will be a Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization TAC meeting on September 26th, 2023 at 10 a.m. And then there'll be our next executive board meeting will be on October 10th, 2023 at 10 a.m. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.